Anyway, let's get to the first topic of today's stream. This is going to be a highlight that I will be uploading onto the secondary channel. And the topic is, as you can see by the title, The Elder Scrolls Online versus Guild Wars 2 versus Final Fantasy XIV. And I want to explain a little bit of that before we get too in-depth into the video. I think that this music might be a little bit too loud, so allow me a second here. This should be good. So I want to make sure that I explain what the concept of the video is before we get into it so that people don't start getting too upset over like, oh my god, I can't believe you would try to compare these games. They're so incredibly different. They are. The whole point of this is I've been reporting a lot on World of Warcraft and how, you know, I don't think things are going very well over there. And there's problems with the game, and there's a lot of people that have decided that they're just not interested in playing World of Warcraft. And so, I've been playing a couple of different MMOs over the last couple of weeks. Like we've played Fantasy Star Online 2, we've played Bless Unleashed, of which some people are apparently mad over my opinions on Bless Unleashed because they say you haven't played enough of the game. Yeah, because I have limited time, and guess what? I'm not going to waste my time if I feel like it's not a game that I'm interested in. It's like I'm not putting out in-depth reviews over here when it comes to talking about MMOs, because reviewing one MMO would be like an investment of at least 3 to 4 months to properly review an MMO. So, yeah. I get my initial impressions, I see whether or not it's something I'm interested in, and then I hop out. But yeah, the whole point here is with people being disappointed in World of Warcraft, I've been playing a lot of MMOs over the last couple of weeks, and I've come up with 3 MMOs that are probably the ones that I like the most out of the ones that I've played, which haven't really been that much, but I will be checking out like New World, Lost Ark. I'll be talking about those when we get there. I'm going to be playing a lot more MMOs moving forward, but you know, the 3 ones that I came away from thinking, you know what? These are actually really good. These are actually really good MMOs. And each of them is doing something that I kind of like in different ways or in different aspects, and they can appeal to different players, right? So let's start things off by talking about The Elder Scrolls Online. So this is some gameplay from when I was playing it on stream, which is why you see my face over here. Pay no attention to that. I'm also not going to be putting audio because probably my commentary would go over the commentary that I'm doing right now. We do have the soundtrack from Blackwood playing in the background. Blackwood is actually the expansion that I went on immediately after the starting experience for ESO, because there's like a tutorial that teaches you stuff. And I went from that tutorial straight into Blackwood because that's one of the cool things about The Elder Scrolls Online is that it has horizontal progression. So even though it's got all of these different expansions, I don't know the name of them all. There's like Tamriel, there's what was it, Elsewhere, and then there's Blackwood, which is the most recent one, and there's like 1 or 2 more, right? And so when the game was on Steam recently, it was there was a promotion. And I just decided, you know what, I'm going to buy this Blackwood edition, the standard version that comes with all of the other expansions, so that I have all of this content. Because one of the cool things about Elder Scrolls Online is that it actually does not require a subscription fee. So once you buy it, you essentially have it forever. I don't know what happened to the music, like it just stopped suddenly. There we go. It's gone again. So once you buy it, you basically have it forever, and you have the content unlocked, and you can play it because, again, it doesn't require a subscription fee. And that is something that is appealing to me, right? It seems like a good pro-consumer move. There's good points and bad points about that in ESO. I'll get into more detail. But one of the things that I quickly realized when I bought what I thought was all of the content in the game is that when you buy it the way that I did and you get like all of the expansions, you actually don't get all of the content in the game, because there's additional content in the game in the form of DLCs that you don't have access to unless you purchase it at a later date, or unless you get their subscription fee, which the game does have a subscription service called ESO Plus, I think. And that will actually just unlock all of the content for you. It doesn't require you to actually buy the expansions or anything like that. You just need to have the game and the subscription, and boom, done, right? So there's a couple of different business models here going with ESO. But I will tell you what, one of the realizations that I came to with the business model of ESO was that I actually think that their subscription fee actually has some very interesting things to it. Why? I mean, there's one thing that I'm not a huge fan of, which is it gives you an unlimited bag for crafting materials if you subscribe to the game. And you guys are like, well, that seems like a really good thing. Yeah, it is if you subscribe, because the problem becomes if you don't subscribe, you're going to wish you had, because inventory management in ESO is a goddamn nightmare unless you have ESO Plus. Now, what I ended up doing, because I didn't want it to get ESO Plus at the time that I was playing the game, was basically I gave up on crafting completely. And I just sold every material that I had or destroyed every material that I would pick up. And I just stopped picking up crafting materials altogether because there was just too many of it. And I noticed that I was spending increasing amounts of time just like managing my inventory, putting stuff in banks. And it was suggesting me, well, you can get some mules. And it's like, yeah, I can go get some mules and I can do all of this other stuff. And I was like, no, screw all that. So that's one of the downsides if you don't pay the monthly fee, is that you are probably going to struggle a little bit with inventory space, particularly if you plan on doing any kind of crafting. But the good aspect of their subscription fee is that, for one, you get access to all of those DLCs that I was talking about, which there is quite a few of them. You get access to all of the expansions minus the latest one. I think you have to buy the last expansion, but everything else, like all of the legacy content, that all comes included with your ESO Plus subscription. And on top of it, every month you get currency for their online store, which, if you think about it, you play World of Warcraft, you pay your subscription fee. What does that actually get you? Access to the game. It doesn't even get you access to like the latest expansion unless you bought that expansion. Doesn't give you access to like anything in the store. You still have to pay money for it. Whereas if you pay the ESO subscription fee, you get some of those premium things, like in the form of the crafting reagents bag and all that stuff. And on top of it, they give you the currency so that you can buy more stuff from the store, which I think is a really, really cool thing that they do with that sub fee. But again, there's still the option of not paying it altogether. But that was just a couple of things in regards to their business model. Their business, obviously, if you go to the store, there's also all kinds of like boosters that you can get. You guys know I'm not a fan of that, but let's get real. If you're playing an MMO in 2021, as far as I can tell, there's not a single MMO that does not have a cash store. So if you're playing an MMO in 2021, you're dealing with a cash store one way or another. You're always going to be dealing with a cash store in some form. That's just the way that it is. So, but besides all of this, what sets The Elder Scrolls Online apart from other MMORPG experiences that I've played? And I think, to me, the biggest plus of The Elder Scrolls Online was the world design. And this is based on my experience just playing through Blackwood. I don't know if this quality is replicated throughout every single other expansion. Like I said, that would be like an investment of months from my part of playing through the whole thing a million times over. I can tell you what I saw in the period of time that I've played through sections of the Blackwood, right? And what I saw was a world that I just kind of wanted to immerse myself in. A world that I just kind of wanted to lose myself in. Whether it's in a dungeon like the one you're watching right now, which is pretty cool, or whether it's on the open world on the outside and you look around and you would see like castles and stuff that just makes you want to go there and explore. So one of the biggest things to me for this game is just straight up the world and exploring the world and questing in the world itself. Seems like it would be fantastic. On top of it, every single NPC is fully voice acted. It doesn't matter if it's a minor side quest, a major main story quest. Everything is voice acted. You talk to an NPC, the NPC talks back to you. Your character is still a silent protagonist, though, which, those are the choices. But everything else is voice acted. Like even the most menial thing you can imagine, voice acted, right? And that is a big deal for immersion. Like, it just keeps you in the game. You don't have to necessarily just read something, even though you can read if you prefer, and you can kind of like skip through dialogue. That's an option as well. But, you know, there is a story there that seems interesting. The stories seem to be, I mean, even though they're all connected in some form or another, they're kind of like their own independent things from my understanding of it, at least. Some of the side quests, some of the main quests and whatnot. And there's all of these different storylines that you have on the game up until this point, which means there's a lot for you to do if you were to get into Elder Scrolls Online in 2021. And that is pretty cool. Now, then we get to some of the parts that I didn't like as much, which is the combat. I'm not the biggest fan of Elder Scrolls Online combat, and the main reasoning behind that is because the animations just aren't that great. And people kept telling me, like, yeah, because you're supposed to animation cancel to make it more effective. If you look at the way that I'm fighting here, you see like me breaking certain animations with certain, I'm just basically spamming left click attacks and like my puncture attack, and that just deletes enemies. Like, look at how fast everything goes down. I've already been told that like the game is not super hard to begin with, but like it just feels awkward to me that the basics of the attack is about animation canceling and doing all of these things that it basically makes the combat look bad, is what I'm saying. From just a pure aesthetic standpoint, it makes it look bad as someone who is watching that combat. Now, as more experienced players are actually playing it, and, you know, as far as their enjoyment, they probably love the combat, and probably if you're someone that enjoys ESO, you might love the combat too. Combat, to me, was one of the weak points of the game. And just animations in general are not particularly well polished. Having said that, the actual visuals of the game, I thought were very appealing. The character design, I think, is pretty good, with the exception of the Khajiit. I think the Khajiit look hideous. Lizards actually look all right. Khajiit, for whatever reason, I don't know. I don't like the way the Khajiit look. Like, I'm sorry. It is what it is. I think the other characters look cool, but Khajiit, I don't know. There's something about the Khajiit that it's whatever. Venetia Silver is pointing out caster animations are so much better than melee. Probably. So if maybe you're planning on playing a ranged class, maybe you'll enjoy it more than I did trying to play a melee class. Maybe I should have made a ranged class, and maybe I would have enjoyed myself a little bit more. But, you know, that's to each and every one of you to decide. I'm just saying that, in my opinion, animations were like one of the weaker parts of it. But the storytelling of it was solid. It kept me immersed through and through. It was fully voice acted. All of that stuff was fun. But the reason I ended up bouncing off of it, and I don't regret, because some people, like, because of the fact that I streamed it a couple times and then I stopped playing it, some people, like, were disappointed with your purchase of the Elder Scrolls Online. It's like, no, if I was disappointed, I probably could have just gotten a refund from Steam, because I didn't play. Actually, I think the refunds probably ended like 2 hours, so I probably couldn't have gotten one. But let's say even if I had the option to, I still wouldn't have done it, because I enjoyed it enough to know that eventually I might want to come back to it and play some more. And I probably will come back to it and play some more. It's just right now I was looking for something that was a little bit less structured than ESO. Because ESO, you still have like your quest, you're going on your quest. And most of the time that I was playing, I was basically playing solo. And I understand that, you know, I was still on the starting levels, and that later down the line you get access to like dungeons, you know, instance dungeons and stuff like that. But I feel like a majority of the experience until you get to like max level is most likely still going to be, you know, a solo experience, just because of the way that the story is told and the way that it's so heavy on dialogue, and you reacting to not reacting, but you like experiencing the story itself with the NPCs and all of this stuff, right? It feels like a very almost Skyrim experience, right? Because that's kind of like the point. That is what it's all about. And I think in terms of immersion, it's one of the best ones. It's one of the best ones out there right now if you just want to immerse yourself in a world and enjoy it. But I was looking for something a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more sandboxy, right? And that brings us to the next one, which is Guild Wars 2. Which was the one that I was playing afterwards. Now, it is important to mention that Guild Wars 2, this was not the first time that I was playing Guild Wars 2. I've played Guild Wars 2 before. I played Guild Wars 2 on launch, and I actually did a /age on my account. And I actually had like over 300 hours of Guild Wars 2, but to be honest, I didn't really remember that much of it. So this was me coming back to Guild Wars 2 and not necessarily playing it for the first time. And what are the pluses of Guild Wars 2? Well, the biggest thing about Guild Wars 2 is the sandbox nature of it, in which it just like throws you into the world and lets you do whatever the hell you want. You can literally just do whatever the hell you want to level up. There is a story which takes place in the core game anyways, takes place every 10 levels. So every 10 levels, you're expected to go to a city, take on a quest, and there's a little bit of scripted quest. I'd say probably anywhere from like 30 minutes to an hour, depending on how fast you are going through it, right? But there's anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour of traditional story, directed, scripted experience in Guild Wars 2. But in between those 10 levels, it's just like there's an open world that's full of activities. There's like suggested levels for each of the areas that you're in, and you can just go and do whatever you want in there. Like right now, we're doing an event killing this dude right here, and there's another player that just happened to be there. So I'm doing this event with this other player who happened to be in the same zone. And this is a quest that would give you a hero point, which is like a skill point that you can then put into this skill tree that you see right here. And that can be either passive things, active abilities, a bunch of different things. So, and this is one of the activities that I did in order to keep leveling up. Like, I'm not sure if you guys can tell because the screen's probably really small, but right now I'm level 22. So I need to level up all the way to level 30 before my next story quest. And in that time, I'm just basically given free reign to go out into the world and do whatever I want. And the world, like I said, is chock full of activities for you to do. And you don't necessarily need to party up with other players. You can. Like if you have friends that are playing the game, they can just party with you and experience the whole thing with you all the way. They can even jump into your story quest, which is a big criticism that I have for Final Fantasy XIV. They can even jump into your main story quest and, help you out with that quest and just be with you along the way, which I think is a huge positive. Because a lot of MMOs nowadays, they end up being more solo experiences, kind of like Elder Scrolls Online, and to a large extent, Final Fantasy XIV. If you think about it, if you're someone who's played through the Final Fantasy XIV storyline, right? It's a fantastic story, and we'll talk more about it later in this presentation, right? It's a fantastic story, but the thing is, it's mostly a solo affair, and at the end of the day, it is an MMO. But most of that story is a solo affair unless you're doing like a dungeon or you happen to be out in the open world. And even then, if you're out in the open world, in most situations, it's still kind of like a solo affair. It just so happens that other players can be around and help you out. Whereas in here, in Guild Wars 2, when you are leveling, it's like if there's somebody out in the world next to you, you're probably doing the same quest. You're probably contributing to the same objective. You're probably, doing the same thing and helping each other out, which in my opinion is really cool. And it just makes it a much easier experience for you to get into if you have like a group of friends. Like let's say you have a group of 5 friends or whatever, and you all jumped into Guild Wars 2. You can all just party up and do these quests out in the open world and level up together, and then either separate and go do your own like story quests, or you can even go do the story quests together, which I think is really cool. And there's a wide variety of activities throughout the world. There's vistas, which usually involve you getting up high to a certain location to see a vista. There's points of interest, which you discover and they give you XP. There's these little heart things that you're supposed to do, and they give you a chunk of EXP. There's teleport things that you unlock in the maps. There's a bunch of different stuff, which is really cool. In terms of its combat, the combat as Guild Wars 2 is actually quite interesting because you have like a skill bar that changes depending on the weapon that you have equipped. So your weapon kind of determines, not just your weapon, I think it's also your weapon and your specialization, because in later expansions, there's like elite specializations and whatnot. So your weapon and your specialization kind of dictate the skills that you get depending, on which weapon you have equipped. But then there's also utility skills that you have off to the side, and those are kind of like how you make a build. So your build is going to be like based around which weapon you want to have on your character as well as which skills you want to have from the class that you're playing. So to give you an idea, I'm playing an engineer. Right now I'm mostly playing with rifle, but I could also play the engineer with a gun and a shield, and the gameplay is going to be a little bit different. I can also play an engineer later down the line with a hammer, and the gameplay is going to be different there. You can also play an engineer with sword and shield. And again, the gameplay is going to change based around the stuff that you do, right? So the combat is interesting that way. And then on top of it, this combat can actually be action combat or tap targeting combat. Now, Elder Scrolls Online is action combat. So basically, you target almost as if you're playing in an action game. And initially, Guild Wars 2, I don't think that the action combat thing was available initially, but initially Guild Wars 2 was a tab targeting MMO. The thing is, the way that Guild Wars 2 works, it kind of lends itself to also potentially playing kind of like an action game, so you can actually trigger something which is action cam or whatever that changes the way that your character plays. I actually did it at one point during this stream. I think it was actually close to here. It'd be cool if I could show it off, but whatever. It's going to be a pain to actually find that now. But, you can actually just play it like an action game if that's what you want. Most players still choose to play it as tap targeting either because they're used to it or maybe it's a little bit more efficient. But there is that option there. I think the combat in Guild Wars 2 is pretty fun. I do remember back when I initially played, I wasn't the biggest fan of melee combat for some reason, which is why, coming back to it, I decided to play Engineer instead, which is much more about ranged combat, obviously, with guns and whatnot, and that's been pretty fun. But, overall, I think the combat's pretty fun. It can be action or tap targeting, all of that stuff. I kind of feel like Guild Wars 2 is potentially, out of these 3 MMOs that I'm going to be talking about today, is potentially the game that respects your time the most. Because the way that you kind of play the game, even though you kind of are grinding, it doesn't necessarily feel like you are. I don't know. It's weird. Maybe it's because I came back to it after a long absence and feels a little bit fresh. But it just feels like you're just playing the game. You're just like completing activities out in the map. And that's just kind of what you're doing. And it doesn't feel like, I got to level up to do this or do that or the other. You're just like naturally progressing through the game, at least in the core experience. I still don't know what the expansions are like. I did buy them. I bought the End of Dragons collection thing, not the collectors, the collection thing that basically comes with all the expansions. But very much like ESO, it also has a couple of DLCs that you don't have access to, which are the Living World updates. But they're like giving those away every week now or something like that. They're giving like a different one of those away. I'll eventually need to understand exactly at which point of the story those events took place so that I'll start testing them out and see how those felt. One of the reasons why I stopped playing Guild Wars 2 back in the day was because I felt that their initial implementation of the fractal instances, which some of you guys are like, fractal instances, think of them kind of like Mythic Plus nowadays is what people describe them as. But their initial implementations of fractals was weird, and it made it very hard for people to like form groups for fractals. It kind of like segregated the community. And that kind of like burned me out on the game, and that's kind of like why I initially stopped playing. But I've been told that has been much improved with the group finder and all of that stuff, so that is something that I'm curious to see. Naturally, as with every MMO, there's also a cash store. They will sell you convenience things. They'll sell you like additional inventory space. But interestingly enough, they didn't make inventory as much of a pain to deal with as Elder Scrolls, in my opinion. In my opinion, Elder Scrolls Online really makes inventory be annoying as hell to deal with unless you have ESO+. And in Guild Wars 2, it didn't really feel like that. You can get yourself a decent amount of bag space. They give you like a bag that you basically get by default a bank thing where it puts all of your materials in there. And interestingly enough, you don't even have to go back to the bank to deposit that stuff. There's just straight up an item in your inventory. Wherever you are in the world, you just press that button and it's just like sucks up all of your material items and sends them into wherever the hell they're supposed to be. And it just cleans up your inventory. It's so nice. I cannot emphasize this enough. It feels so nice to be able to just press a button And off the materials go into the nether or whatever the hell they go to just be stored away in some place that you don't have to think about right now. I love that feature. And I don't think that feature was around when I initially started playing the game. I don't think that was a thing. I think that was something that they added at a later date. But that, to me, is amazing. Like the fact that, you know, they do sell you some of that convenience. They give you additional, like, not give you, they sell you additional slots in your inventory, bigger bags, and all of this stuff. But at the same time, they also do give you ways in which you can manage your inventory with more limited space, which is very, very nice. And like I said, I do feel like this game really respects your time. It's just like, hey, play it. Don't play it. You're not paying a sub fee. There actually is no sub fee plan in this game. It's like if you want to buy something from the store, you have to buy like their gems or whatever the hell it is. And you can buy those with gold. So if you're like a really good gold farmer, you can even just like straight up buy tons of stuff from the store by just transforming that gold into gems and then just buying the stuff. Now, it is important to say that also opens up the possibility of doing the opposite. So you can buy gems and trade those for gold, and I really don't like that. That is a feature that I don't like. That's basically kind of like similar to the way that the World of Warcraft WoW token works, where you buy it for money, then you sell it for gold, and you can basically, you know, transform real-life currency into in-game currency, and I never like when that happens in any video game. I don't think that's good. But, you know, that is one of the things that you have to deal with for Guild Wars 2. And at the end of the day, I still think that Guild Wars 2 is a lot of fun. And that's why I also wanted to bring that up for, you know, potential players that are kind of like disillusioned with their recent World of Warcraft experience. One more thing that I should talk about when it comes to Guild Wars 2, I just got reminded looking at this footage, is the mounting system. Now, you don't get mounts as early as I have in this video. You need to have a max level character to get mounts, but like I said, because I had previously played over 300 hours of the game, I already had a max level character, so I was able to go into one of the expansions, I believe it's Path of Fire or whatever, and get your first mount so that I would then have access to that mount. And it would just like speed things along, because like I said, it's not the first time that I'm playing this game, so I don't mind speeding things along a little bit. As a matter of fact, I have 2 level 80 boosts, so like if I wanted to go to the expansions, I could already do it. Like I have 2 level 80 boosts that they gave me when I bought the expansions. I just chose not to use them because I want to actually get reacquainted with the game at my own pace and just enjoy the journey there, and not necessarily just like boost my way and go do the latest and greatest of content, right? So, but yeah, as I was saying, this mounting system is legit. Like, there's something about the way mounts move in this game. I can't even explain to you exactly what it is. There's something about the animations, the momentum of the mount, the fact that the mount actually has attack. So like when you dismount, you can actually have your mount do an attack as like your opening salvo for whatever it is that you're going to be doing next. And that's just with the most basic of basic mounts, because there's like 8 different types of mounts. There's flying mounts. There's mounts that go underwater. There's all kinds of different stuff that you can do with mounts. Like I've seen players breathe fire from the air and whatnot. I'm not sure if that's a skill or if that's a mount thing, but mounts in this game are like their own thing, and it's very interesting. And a cool thing that I learned yesterday that just kind of like blew my mind was the fact that you can basically just dye your mount. Like, you know how Blizzard constantly does mount recolors, and it's like a big deal. Oh yeah, here's the red one, here's the blue one, here's the green one. In Guild Wars 2, it's like you just go into your dye box and be like, okay, I want my mount to be green now, and it paints it green. There's still skins that you can get for the mount, and a lot of them you can get in the store, as you can imagine, because at the end of the day, this is a buy-to-play game with no subscription fee, so it's to be expected that it's going to have stuff like that. But still, like, I was very surprised with the mounting system. The mounts feel very unique. You don't have, like, a casting timer to get on your mount. You don't have to, like, be out of combat for 2 hours to get on your mount. It's just really weird how you just like you press a button, you're mounted, you press the button again, you're not mounted. It's weird. And mounts have like their own skills and stuff that they can do. So my mount can jump forwards a little bit more than what you'd expect. And yeah, there's a bunch of stuff to explore with that. And I just thought it was really, really cool. And yeah, Oh yeah, look, this is the action mode that I was talking about. So basically right now you're playing as if this was an action combat game, and the camera just kind of like moves whenever you move your mouse, and you can aim your actual shots towards the monsters, which is what I'm doing. But yeah, that is pretty cool. And that is Guild Wars 2. So now we got to talk about the next one, which is it's been the new home of many a World of Warcraft refugee, and that is Final Fantasy XIV. What can I say about Final Fantasy XIV? As far as I'm concerned, when it comes to the story experience, Final Fantasy XIV's got the best one. And when I say it's got the best one, I don't mean it's got the best one for an MMO. I mean it's got the best one of the best stories in video games, period. Some people will disagree with that because they played Realm Reborn for like 2 hours and they got bored. Those people are 100% wrong. Don't even bother me with those people. The people that quit during Realm Reborn, you just don't even know. You just have no idea. You just have no idea whatsoever whether the story is good or not. Because there's a lot of setup during Realm Reborn, which is why there's so many complaints for it. There's a lot of setup for... It's like people in the community have described it to me as if planting seeds. During Realm Reborn, they're planting the seeds. And like if you imagine that you're planting seeds in your garden, it's not necessarily exciting, right? You're just putting stuff in the dirt and then you're waiting for something to come out. The thing is, as you continue to play, if you actually play all the way through like Heavensward, those seeds start to blossom and a little flower starts popping up, you know? That little flower is actually pretty fucking cool. Like you look at it and like, oh my God, this story is actually really good. And then it keeps blossoming and blossoming. And then by the time you get to like Shadowbringers, it's like this fucking giant palm tree that gives you coconuts and pineapples and mango. It's like the most colorful palm tree you can imagine. It sucks your dick if you want to. It serves you coffee. It does, you know. And it's a feels explosion too. Like I've been moved to tears several times throughout the story of Final Fantasy XIV. Very few games can ever do that. Very few games can claim to have ever done that. And that is why, in my opinion, it's not only the best of any MMO, it's just one of the best stories ever told in gaming, period. Period. End of. End of. And you know, the thing is, a lot of people don't have the patience necessary to invest the time to enjoy that story, and that's fine. Because even if you don't care for the story, and if you skip, I'm not going to be here criticizing people for skipping. I would advise you not to do it. But if you do choose to skip it, that is completely your decision. You're free to do whatever the hell you want. But at the end of the day, it still has great satisfying gameplay with complex jobs. Like, if you think that playing your class is complicated in World of Warcraft, you can go ask any of like the big WoW streamers whether or not they think which class they think is easier, their World of Warcraft class or their Final Fantasy XIV job. And I'll guarantee you that like 90 to 80% of them will tell you that no, the 14 one is harder. It's more complex, but it gives you more satisfying gameplay because, you know, it takes more skill to play. And this is my opinion. You know, feel free to disagree with that. That is an opinion. I'm not stating it as a fact. I'm just saying, to me, it feels like it requires more skill to play like a Final Fantasy XIV Paladin than a World of Warcraft Paladin or a World of Warcraft Warrior or anything. And Final Fantasy XIV Paladin is one of the easiest tanks to play. If you're talking about something like a Gunbreaker, which is significantly more complex in terms of its rotation, it is even harder than the Final Fantasy XIV Paladin. And this is as someone that has played a significant amount of Final Fantasy XIV. I still drop my rotation from time to time because, you know, I don't do a lot of Savage content. I don't do any Savage content or whatever. So it's not necessary for me to hone the stuff to that level, but I do try. I do try to hone it as much as I can. And I would like to at some point try out the Savages and all that stuff. It's just I don't have enough people to jump in there with me, and I don't want to do Party Finder. So what's the downside of 14? The downside of 14 is that it's going to require a huge time investment. And the starter levels, they're not going to be as complicated because you have a 2.5 second GCD and you don't have a lot of your abilities until you get to level 80. So the starting levels, depending on your class, you're going to be pressing like 2 or 3 buttons and that's it. So it's not super exciting gameplay by that point. But as, mechanics start getting more intricate, like in my case here, I'm going right now into my Requi combo, which is something that you don't get until like a lot later in the game. And it basically changes up your rotation significantly. So you have to do like your 1-2-3 combo, and then you go into the Requi combo, and you still have to manage your OGCDs and do all of these other things. And it's not as complicated as it sounds for someone that is not experienced in 14, but it does give you a satisfying gameplay experience going through it. But like I said, it is a huge time investment, both to get through the story and to master your class, to master your job. You're going to have to put in quite a bit of time to master your job and to start thinking in the right way of how to play the game, because it's very different from like WoW or a lot of other MMOs. Now, the good thing is that there's a big payoff for that time investment, in that you can play literally any job that you want on your main character. So once you go through the story once, let's say you want to do an alt, you don't have to do the story again. You can basically just go up to your character, like my character right now has a sword and a shield. He's a paladin. I can literally, not during combat, but like outside of combat, I can literally equip a gunblade to him, and he's a gunbreaker. Like, that's it. He's a gunbreaker. And if I haven't leveled a gunbreaker, he's going to be a level 1 gunbreaker, so I still have to go level him up by doing, dungeons and world content like Fates, or I can go do Palace of the Dead, which is a completely separate thing from the world that gives you a different experience in the game, right? But you do have to level those up. But once you level those up, you can basically just like swap jobs whenever you want. Like, to give you an idea, I have max level Paladin, max level Warrior, max level Gunbreaker, max level Red Mage, max level Dragoon, max level Machinist, max level Astro, max level Scholar, max level Summoner, and I can basically play whichever one of those I want at level 80. Which is pretty fun. You get the choice. You want to be DPSer now? Do you want to be, a tank? And some of those classes share gear, right? So like the tanks, for instance, the Paladin, Warrior, Gunbreaker, they all share the same gear minus the weapon. So it's like if I optimize my gear for my Paladin, then, I got my gear sorted for most of my tanks. All I have to figure out is the weapons. The weapons is the only thing that I still have to get done. Oh yeah, Gunbreaker starts at 60, actually. I was wrong. You don't have a level 1 Gunbreaker, because Gunbreaker starts at 60. Sorry, my bad. But yeah, that's the way that stuff works in there. There's also really good raids if you're not into the story. Like right here, we're doing the near raids, which right now is kind of like, it's a little bit more, it's still relevant content, but it's easier content because people like overgear it by now. But it's still a fun raid to do. It's still got interesting mechanics and really cool set piece moments and whatnot, and it's a lot of fun. So you got fantastic raids. You got very challenging content as well, if that is something that you're into. You got your Savages, you got your Ultimates. You have a ton of really challenging content that you would expect from like a fully fleshed out MMO. However, this game does require a sub fee. Unlike Guild Wars 2 and ESO, you do have to commit to this game if you want to play it. You have to pay the sub fee. However, and I said however twice in a row, it does have the free trial. Not sure if you guys heard of it. It includes the critically acclaimed expansion Heavensward. You can level up to level 60 with no time restrictions. You guys probably heard the meme by now, but it is really good. And I would even say, even if you plan on never subbing to Final Fantasy XIV, the story is so good that it is worth playing the trial up until the end because you get the entirety of the Heavensward story, which is a fantastic expansion. So that's Final Fantasy XIV. And that's also Guild Wars 2 and the Elder Scrolls Online and all of that stuff. It is important to mention, like you guys can see, I'm not sure if you guys can read in the footage there, game provided by Square Enix. Square Enix did send me a copy of this game. I probably could have gotten copies of Elder Scrolls and Guild Wars 2 if I really wanted to, but I was just like, I just want to get them, check them out, whatever. But yeah, that's my thoughts on all of them. Final Fantasy XIV has become my main MMO since I've played it all the way back in... Not in 2013, because first I played it in 2013. I got burned out on it because I was playing it like World of Warcraft, which was not the best way of playing it. But, you know, in 2019, I jumped into it again after the failure that was Battle for Azeroth. And that's the moment where I was like, okay, this game is actually friggin' amazing. And pretty much since then, whenever it comes to MMOs, Final Fantasy XIV is my main MMO, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. That's not to say it has to be your main MMO, because maybe you're not as interested in story as I am. Maybe you're not as interested in the aesthetic of Final Fantasy XIV as I am, which I think it looks good. Some people don't like the anime look to it. Some people don't like cat girls, although some people changed their opinion on that now, didn't they? But, you know, it is what it is. Some people like it. Some people will not like it. You don't have to like it. It doesn't have to be for everyone. But that's the reason why I covered these 3 different MMOs. If you are someone that wants to play the game solo and wants to have an immersive experience, the best one for you is Elder Scrolls Online. If you are someone that wants something a little bit more sandbox and something that you can play with a group of friends right from the get-go, the best one for you is probably Guild Wars 2. If you are someone that wants to experience a story that is going to blow your fucking mind, then Final Fantasy XIV is going to be the one for you. And when I said that this is versus, it's not to determine which one's the best one, it's to determine which one's the best one for you. And there you go. That's what I did. I solved the problem. If you're quitting World of Warcraft and you feel like jumping into another MMO, one of these 3, you're probably going to enjoy it. For those 3, which of the MMOs would you say rewards player skill the most, as in mastering the combat? From a PvE or a PvP standpoint, Venetia? From PvE, I would say it's probably Final Fantasy XIV. From PvP, I would say it's probably Guild Wars 2. See, that's where you're wrong. That's where you're wrong, Venetia. World versus World in Guild Wars 2, from my understanding, is actually not a meme. Like, the PvP in Guild Wars 2 is actually legitimately good. So it's like, if you're someone who's really into PvP, and I don't mean like good as in like World of Warcraft, because the PvP in World of Warcraft is a piece of shit, and I have no idea how that scene is as prestigious as it is, other than that it's the size of just the sheer size of the game and how popular it is, right? But when it comes to PvP, Guild Wars 2 is actually legit. The world versus world stuff is actually legit. So yeah, it's like if you're looking for, you know, the most rewarding one in terms of player skills for PvE, I would definitely say 14, but for PvP, I definitely say Guild Wars 2. They give players stock stats. It's like after you level up to a certain, I don't know exactly which level it is. I think it was like level 3. Basically, you can jump into PvP and you have all of your trees unlocked and boom, go. Minus the whatever is locked by the expansions, of course, because some elite specializations lock in the expansions. But basically, everything that you would get at level 80, you get it. You get everything that you could possibly have. All of the stats are normalized. Everything is good to go.